Shams reported yesterday that Jimmy Butler wants out of Miami before the NBA trade deadline, and in response, the internet put together the worst Jimmy Butler trade ideas I've ever seen. Right here, we have NBA trade packages and landing spots for Miami Heat star Jimmy Butler on Bleacher Report. Let's go through them, beginning in Golden State. The Warriors get Jimmy Butler, Haywood Highsmith, and Larson for Andrew Wiggins, Gary Payton, Kevon Looney, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, and a 2025 first-round pick top 5 protected, and a 2027 first-round pick from Golden State. If Miami gets this offer, they're taking it in a heartbeat. They're not looking at anything else. They're not calling any other teams. If they can get this in exchange for a guy that's going to be a free agent in 4 months, they will do it. When I've been putting together some of these Jimmy Butler trades for Golden State, a couple of things are clear. One, Wiggins has to be in the deal. Two, you have to find some other guys in the rotation to go out to make the contracts work. In this case, it's Gary Payton and Kevon Looney. And three, one of the young guys is going to have to go. Kuminga, Podziemski, and probably a pick as well. But this scenario involves literally every single piece that Golden State has to trade out, that they have to improve. All of their flexibility is gone to bring in a guy in Jimmy Butler that the only reason he's available, the only reason that Jimmy Butler wants out of Miami is an option to trade for at this deadline is because the Miami Heat, who have had Jimmy Butler in the building for the last couple of years, know more about Jimmy Butler than any other team in the league right now, doesn't want to extend him at the number that he wants. So that guy is now all of a sudden worth the entirety of the future in Golden State. I understand the desperation. I've talked about it. I've made videos about it, talking about how the Warriors are desperate to add a star alongside Steph Curry. They don't just want to be one of these middle-of-the-pack teams in the West. They're running out of time. He said publicly that he started to think about what the future is going to look like without basketball for him. All that is real. The Steph Curry era Warriors, their mortality is staring them right in the face. But that doesn't mean you're trading away literally every single piece that you have. If the Warriors were able to do this, yes, they have Steph, they have Butler, Haywood Highsmith would be a nice addition for them. You've got Draymond, they still have guys like Schroeder and Buddy Hield, and they would be able to figure it out. And I have no doubt that for this year, this would improve their basketball team. They're consolidating a ton of pieces that, assuming Butler is better than like Andrew Wiggins, this is going to help them. But then, and I've already talked about this in other videos, talking about Golden State's possibilities of getting Butler, you have to sign him to a contract extension. If you're trading for Butler, certainly in this scenario, you're signing up for giving him a big contract. And there is just no way in my mind that this is a deal that Golden State would do, that Golden State would even offer this. And if Miami got this, they would take it 100 out of 100 times. Speaking of compensation, let's go now to the Houston Rockets suggestion here. Jimmy Butler for Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, Aaron Holiday, and 3 future first-round picks from Houston. I've already talked about this with Houston in that Dillon Brooks has to be in the deal. That's one of the big issues with Jimmy Butler trades is teams are not only giving away future assets, but these are obviously teams that are trying to contend, and they have to give away real rotation pieces as well. Dillon Brooks has been good for Houston. Jabari Smith is a piece that I think is 100% going to be in the deal because Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun can't be traded this year because they gave him extensions. They probably wish they hadn't have done that right about now, at least for Jalen Green, because he would be a perfect fit, I think, in this deal. Cam Whitmore, people have just kind of forgotten about. I still think that he's good, still think there's something there, but he's spent a lot of time in the G League this year, but maybe Miami likes him as an asset. I just don't understand the draft compensation here. Why can't this just be Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith? You want to have Cam Whitmore in there, that's fine. And the top 5 protected 2025 first, and then call it a day. Why does Houston have to up their offer all the way to this? This is the same situation as the first year with Golden State. If Miami gets this deal, if they're on the phone talking to Houston, and this is the trade that they get, they're taking it. They're not talking to other teams. This is the deal that they're taking. 3 first-round picks for a guy, Jimmy Butler, that's getting older, doesn't play that much, is not under contract beyond next season, and clearly wants a massive deal. This is just way too much compensation. Houston doesn't have to do anything this year. This isn't the Warriors situation. They can wait 2 years without adding a star and still be totally fine. There's no issue with them because they have all this young talent and all these assets. Not to mention the fact that anytime any star becomes available in the future, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, whoever the next guy is, they're going to be at the front of the line for that guy. One, because they have Phoenix's picks, but 2, they have a fantastic nucleus with which a star can just jump into and play and compete straight away. This is not a deal that Houston would ever in a million years offer in exchange for Jimmy Butler. Next up, let's talk about Dallas. Jimmy Butler for Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, and 2 first-round pick swaps. This is basically tearing apart everything that the Mavs have done over the last year and a half, 2 years to improve their team to bring in Jimmy Butler. Now, yes, theoretically, Jimmy Butler, Kyrie, Luka, especially now with Luka hurt, that trio of guys would be awesome. If you can figure out some of the spacing issues with Butler trying to play off the ball, you could figure out a bunch of that stuff. Absolutely, this is the deal that Dallas would take a look at in terms of just bringing in Jimmy Butler in general. But there's a reason they've turned their entire, basically, franchise around within the last 14 months And it's because they traded for PJ Washington. It's because they traded for Daniel Gafford. And Klay Thompson, although he hasn't been awesome this year for them, has been pretty solid. I've already talked about Dallas trades where if they're getting Jimmy Butler because the contract is so big, they have to give up a couple of rotation pieces. And in the deal, PJ Washington or Klay Thompson has to be in it. And I don't understand why we continue to think that it's a real possibility that Dallas is going to get Jimmy Butler, because I don't think they're trading either PJ Washington or Klay Thompson for someone in Jimmy Butler that, yes, helps your team from a star perspective, but isn't a complementary piece around the guys that you already have and is getting older, isn't that durable, and is not under contract for next season. Like, yes, there are other pieces here for Dallas that could step up. Najee Marshall's been good. Derek Lively's been good. And maybe this is a depth into star consolidation trade that to you makes sense. That's entirely possible. To me, I don't get this at all. Not to mention the fact that if I'm the Miami Heat, I'm not that interested in this deal either. I don't really care about the future pick swaps that much. And Klay, PJ Washington, and Daniel Gafford aren't helping me. They're not helping me go where I want to go, which is down. I don't want to be this middle of the pack Eastern Conference team. And that's exactly where this trade puts Miami. I don't think they're doing this deal unless all three of these pieces are rerouted somewhere else. Maybe you keep PJ Washington, but Klay's got to go somewhere. Gafford's got to go somewhere for some compensation. The Heat actually aren't going to do this either. This is the first actual lose-lose. No team would actually accept the deal trade. Now we have to talk about Phoenix, because anytime we talk about Jimmy Butler trades, Phoenix has to be involved. And they didn't actually even put together a trade for this one, but I still felt it was worth mentioning because we've already talked about the Beal thing. He would have to waive his no-trade clause to go somewhere, and Miami doesn't want him because they don't want the contract. So the solution here is Butler goes to the Suns, Beal goes to Brooklyn, and the Nets get rid of Ben Simmons, and then there's some assets exchanged for each of these teams. This is why the Bradley Beal thing doesn't work, because the Nets have already said they're not taking on contracts beyond 2 years. Like, maybe if it's Michael Porter Jr., someone with some upside, maybe, but they're not taking on the worst contract in sports. They don't own a bunch of their future picks. They're turning this team around within the next 1.5 to 2 years, whether the rest of the league likes it or not. They're not taking on these big contracts. And that's the issue with the Suns thing with Jimmy Butler and Bradley Beal. They can't find a Beal team. It's a terrible contract. It's got a no trade clause. He's worth a ton of money, and he's not playing very well, and he's getting older, and he's never available. So just like Miami doesn't want to bring back Bradley Beal, the Nets certainly don't either. The Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler trade construction is almost an impossibility unless you can somehow incentivize a team with assets to take on Bradley Beal and then just buy out his contract and he can go sign somewhere else. Not to mention the fact that it says that Ben Simmons is a nice expiring contract for Miami to open up some cap flexibility. So is Jimmy Butler. He's going to opt out of the player option. He's already told everybody that. So if your goal is to open up cap space, then just don't trade Jimmy Butler and that will happen. But now we get to one that actually makes a little bit of sense. Denver gets Jimmy Butler and Larson in exchange for Michael Porter Jr., Zeke Naji, Dario Saric, and 3 future first-round picks from Denver. I've already talked about the fit of Jimmy Butler in Denver alongside Jamal Murray, alongside Jokic. They're already the lowest volume three-point shooting team in the league. They're already one of the worst spacing teams in the entire league. So yes, getting rid of Michael Porter Jr. in exchange for Jimmy Butler doesn't really make sense to solve that problem, but maybe they're just not even going to try and solve the problem. Maybe they're just going to double down, add a star, and hope that they can figure it out and hope that it works. And Miami, I think, would be at least decently interested in Michael Porter Jr. as an asset, as someone that could potentially turn into something alongside Bam, alongside Tyler Hero. And who knows, maybe those future first-round pick swaps actually end up becoming something of value down the road for Miami. This is the only deal in the entire video that I could actually see both teams looking at and saying, this makes a good amount of sense for us. If Denver thinks that they can re-sign Jimmy Butler long-term, they're already locked in anyway to Jokic, of course, and then Murray, who they signed to an extension in the offseason. They're already locked into this group. They're already clearly not good enough. Changing things up, making some kind of a deal, and trying to figure this thing out makes sense for them. And if Miami truly wants to just move on from the Jimmy thing and their other offers aren't that good, they could do worse than MPJ and some future draft assets. But all in all, and I've already talked about this in the other Jimmy Butler videos, I just thought this one would be fun and funny. I think it's Golden State and I think it's Denver, not for the trade package that Golden State offered in the first video, because I think they'd like to add 2 different pieces if they could. I think they could get Butler and then maybe go out and get someone like Vucevic as well. And then Denver, I think, makes a lot of sense unless they get someone like Zach LaVine, but these trades were hilarious nonetheless.